Hello and greetings everyone, and welcome to the Wisdom Tree Institute's FAQ series. Now, the question for today is connected to the fire element and the fire imbalance. This user asked us, and I'm just going to read this because it's a bit lengthy, but I can quite relate to this, and I feel many of our audience can as well. I have felt like my fire element is most always in imbalance and most susceptible to imbalances. I am almost scared of it. I have no great ambitions or desires, but I worry about my anxiety and fear my anger. I want to cultivate my fire, but I don't know how. Oftentimes I have tried, but it gets out of hand, and I am too energetic and zealous for people around me. I guess I can become dominating. It fizzles out after someone gets up to calm me back down, but I burst out in anger and then tears. I want to learn how to cultivate fire. Okay, so this really speaks to my heart because managing the fire element was actually the primary reason I actually got into the realm of hermetic alchemy and working with elemental energies. If you guys don't know this, my background was a tech CEO. I was managing a company. There was just a lot of stress. Whether I succeeded or not meant putting bread and food on the table for 40 to 60 employees at the time. So there was a high pressure job. And I remember at the time that I just continuously felt angry, and there wasn't any other emotion that I could process except for anger. And on top of that, for most people, when they think back to memories, they can remember different type of emotions, they can remember different type of events. But for me, the ones that really stuck out was any memory that's associated with anger. So I'm deeply connected to that. And you'll find that with different personalities, people are imbalanced in different ways, but there are specific elemental affinities and strengths. And when I say strengths, I don't mean just the good parts. So for example, for someone like myself, I have a much higher propensity for fire, and that might relate to this user as well. They say once you can slay your demon and integrate that, it becomes your strength. The propensity with fire means that I have a very strong propensity for ambition, for courage, for confidence, but simultaneously also a propensity for destruction, over ambition, pride, anxiety, overheated anger, lashing out at people. And there was a time between my wife and I, and my wife being the most supportive and loving person to me my entire life. I remember on a daily basis, I would be treating her very poorly because of my own anger management issues. And it was at that time where I realized this is enough. There's no amount of success, no amount of money in this world that makes it worth it and that can excuse me from these type of behavior. So it was really that time where I stopped chasing the wealth, the money, and the influence, and rather just started looking at myself. What I realized at the time is if I can't even change myself, how can I help others? So everything starts back within. And it's by changing yourself that as within, so without, that you can truly impact the world. I'm providing you maybe some context of my own experience. That way you know that when I offer you some advice, it's from a place of someone who's actually struggled with this. Because personally for me, I don't really take advice from people who haven't done it and who haven't succeeded in solving the problem that I'm trying to solve. In terms of the fire element, let's work at it from a couple of angles. Within the elemental spectrum, there's two ways of balancing a specific element. The first way of balancing it is you actually just tap into the fire itself. But what I found is, especially someone who has very strong fire propensity and who is already in balance with fire, the first time I tapped into this type of energy, it was explosive. And I remember at the time, one of my teachers and mentors, she looked at my field and she's clairvoyant and she can just see there's so much fire and it was so destructive. And when I tapped into this quality, I had to release it immediately. And that energy proliferated. We were practicing in a wilderness reserve at the time in Thailand, and it just felt like that energy just released all into the trees and just everything was burning, and it just almost felt like a graveyard afterwards. So much fire and so much pressurization. And the reason for that was if you're scared of your fire, you tend to suppress it because once things are released, you end up hurting the people around you. To reconnect to the point that I was mentioning, when you first tap into the fire, it might feel very explosive. And from my experience working the fire, it's almost like it's necessary to allow that pressurization to release. So sometimes you really need to max out and allow that fire to overwhelm and just be okay with it and realize like when you work on it from an energetic perspective, as long as you're not accumulating in your heart or your head area, and allow it to express all of that potential energy, and your body builds almost like a resilience to the fire, and the energy matrix that surrounds your subtle body, it gets strengthened and it becomes stress tested by being able to hold more fire. So what that allows you to do is actually hold that potential energy without it bursting out, without it being destructive, and really building a relationship with the fire. The universe is holographic. So what I realized with fire is that there's this yang quality of the ambition and destruction, and my relationship with fire was pure yang, pure masculine. However, you can also tap into actually this feminine quality of fire, and that feminine quality is more of a nurturing, something like I have a fire pit right next to me. This idea of bringing warmth and life to the people around you. And when there is a lot of coldness outside and when your body is needing that internal heat, that fire actually gives life. Fire is nurturing, fire is love, fire is intimacy. After I got in tune with that destructive capacity of mine and sat in it for a while, I realized that beyond destruction, there was also this sense of calm. There was also a sense of this hospitality and nurturing quality. So I felt that was very empowering, just being able to connect with both modes of fire, the masculine quality as well as the feminine. I'm a fire, my constitution, my doshas, everything about me is fire. So I just try to amp everything up in order to maybe show off, right? That's the fire quality, you want to shine. But what this intelligence really taught me is almost like this old wisdom. It's, oh, you're a young bull, I get that, but slow down, right? And then it really showed me that fire can come in so many different forms. There's this blazing fire, but also almost like the smoldering coal. And that smoldering coal quality, that is much more sustainable. I have this continuous pattern in my life where I like really amp up my ambition, my work ethic, but then go into burnouts. The pattern I've been having. But I think with that smoldering coal and having a fire that never dies, that eternal flame, that's a much more mature fire. And you can see that in the process of making a campfire, where when you first start, you have your tinder and the wood, the fire, it's quite large, it burns quick. It looks quite impressive, but that type of fire gets burnt out real quick. And you see this in young executives and the young go-getters where they have the world's their ambition and they have so many dreams, but they don't have sustaining power. Whereas you look at an old wise man or someone who's been there, done that, the approach they have is much more like a marathon. They're much more patient. There's a saying, as I live in Vietnam now, it's called a steel spirit. It's like that force that just never dies out, but it's continuous. There's that continuous flow of ambition, of courage, of forward momentum. The more you meditate on the fire principle, the deeper you'll understand that there's just infinite wisdom with this a single element. The next thing I would recommend, another way to work with fire is you work with this counter opposite, which is the water quality. What I realized is that the only emotion I was experiencing was anger. The reason for that was because I wasn't connected to my heart center. And the water element is the element that helps open up your emotional state, helps connect you with the flow of emotions, the flow of compassion. You can only have compassion for others when you have compassion and love for yourself. So working on the water element really helped dissolve a lot of the anger. And what I realized is that there's a level of depth and complexity to that in that it comes in layers. I dissolved the surface level anger that I would feel for myself or others. There might be this inward level of frustration. And when I meditate and I dissolve that frustration, what's left is anxiety. And as I dissolve anxiety, it might come into this feeling of not feeling good enough. And when I dissolve that, it could be, for example, not feeling loved, not feeling safe in my body. And as I continue dissolving, then it could be closer to the bottom. It's like this guilt of not being good enough. And when you dissolve the guilt, then there's this fear that if I don't perform, then I don't get the love and I don't feel loved. And when I say dissolve, I don't mean conquering it or abolishing it, but rather just integrating it, accepting it, and relaxing that out of you. And as you relax that quality out, what really remains as the bedrock of all emotion is just pure love. So I found that process quite empowering, and working with the water quality will give you discernment of these multiple emotional layers, because these emotions, it's quite ineffable, but it flows like water. One layer can flow into another and they bleed into each other. The more you connect with water, the more layers of emotions you can feel, that if you were just fire, you can only see that superficial quality, which is the manifestation of all of those deep emotions into anger itself or into anxiety, which is much more on the surface. Now, as you connect more with water, you begin to get these depths of emotions and this almost like this ocean of emotion. And then how you discern the layers is you cultivate into the Dantian system. And what you'll find is anger is usually expressed in this almost like this exuberance and overstimulation of the vital quality of the Jing. So if you pull that into a more refined quality of the astral, the fluidity of your emotion, and the qi is connected to the heart center, the middle dantian, and as you expand that out, it's like this information packet. Previously, when your heart is closed, all of it is closed, and the only signal that it's sending out is anger. And this is why you feel the anxiety in your chest area, in your solar plex. You feel this anger like boiling up. as it's associated to anxiety. Now, when you take that anxiety signal and you astrally breathe into it, it expands out. And what happens when that expands out is that there's just a plethora of other complexities towards the anxiety, and that gives you insight. In the RDG program, you're going to learn how to heal from those, and that you're going to learn to dissolve and release it. But equally important is actually just to stay in there. And what you want to develop is not a relationship where you fear the anger and anxiety, but rather a curiosity. You want to approach it like a scientist, understanding the mechanism and the structure and the overall causation chain of what's causing this. So now, as you take that anxiety signal, because you can feel it, you can tap into it with your mental essence, with your your intention, astrally breathe into it, and then you're gonna feel like there's this signal. When you open up the package, you can see almost like the coding behind it. And you can see, okay, so there's this program running here. Everyone has their own kind of buildup of what is causing these emotional packets. So the power of astral training and training in that emotional field is you get discernment of the qualities, and simply by understanding it, it becomes integrated. The more you understand and have discernment, the more you own that energy. By owning that energy, you can then channel it towards your own strength. And by understanding when the weakness comes out, you can alchemize that weakness up into the higher vibrations. And why it's important not to get too paranoid and afraid at these shadows is because these shadows at one time served your life. You may have needed to be angry for a survival mechanism, or you may have needed to express additional fire in order to break through some obstacles. And in a way, your elemental imbalances and your elemental strengths signals also your highest potential. So if you are afraid of the bad, you're also neglecting the good. So for example, at one point I was terrified of my fire. So I also had a very mixed feeling and a lot of anxiety towards my own desire for success, my own relationship to being really good at breaking through and having results, measurable goals, and a lot of the attributes that made me a successful CEO. And I'm still in that process. It's very cyclical. You work through it and then you realize you have more to work through and then more to work through. So the whole process of alchemy is you want to strengthen your ability, you want to harmonize, balance yourself. Ultimately, you want to strengthen your own internal conviction, your own internal fire, balancing it in order to have the strength to then open up that demon inside you and then to say, you know what, I see you and you're a part of me and you're here to serve me. We're here to work together as a team as opposed to wanting to escape from it and wanting to lock it in a cage. I hope that gives you some context. So to summarize this video, you want to develop both the yang and the yin relationship with the fire element. You want to work with the water element as well to get the contrast of the fire. You want to bring the vital energy into the astral in order to get more discernment of your emotional qualities and emotional states of how the anger is packaged and to what other issues and traumas they're linked towards in order to integrate, have discernment, and own the wounds. Like when you cut yourself, you have a scar, and that scar actually becomes stronger. Or when you break your bone and the bone grows back, it becomes stronger than what you once had. And that becomes your sword, that becomes your strength in order to do the service that you're meant to do. The last thing that I would also mention is in order to balance any element, working with all four elements simultaneously does that. And again, the elements are holographic. So within the fire itself, there is the yin and the yang, which is the fire and the water, but then there's also the air quality of fire and the earthing quality of fire. So the air quality might be like the anger rising upwards and having a lot of liver heat from a Chinese medicine perspective. So when you have excess fire, your liver overheats and you have this air rising quality. So you want to be able to ground that energy, ground it into ambition, into action, into movement. That's why when you're angry, sometimes just going outdoors, chopping some wood, doing some gardening, getting your hands dirty on the earth, that's going to help. So as you work with all four elements, it's going to give you more clarity on how you can also manage the fire itself. So that's that. I hope it gives you some insight about how to manage your own fire. And at the end of the day, you hear it from all these mythologies throughout the world. See, it's not about slaying the demon, slaying the dragon, but rather understanding that all the myths out there, it's about this internal struggle within, and it's about integrating the dragon. It's about seeing that the part of you that you're most scared of is still you, and being able to own that and own the strength that it's given you and alchemize the lead to gold, alchemize the shadows into light. I hope that gives you a good perspective. If you have anything you would like to share, please drop us a comment below, and we're happy to go even deeper with you on this journey of personal alchemy of the fire element. And like always, please subscribe to continue following us along on Wisdom Tree Institute's mission to connect the ancestral wisdom of the East and the West into our own unique healing modality and creating this cosmic blueprint for universal ascension. Take care now. Bye.